And I've got a few topics to discuss with you today. And the first one is going to be about the UK pound and the Brexit, and a couple of articles on some new developments with some banks. So I'll start off with this article from Market Watch, which was posted 16 hours ago. The title reads, "Pound weakens on report UK could trigger Article 50 sooner than expected." Also, the Canadian dollar weakens. The pound tumbles Friday on reports that the UK could invoke Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty during the first half of 2017 ahead of crucial elections in France and Germany. Bloomberg reported that the UK Prime Minister Theresa May is leaning towards invoking Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, which would formally begin the talks over the UK exit from the European Union by April at the latest. So this was obviously the reason the pound went to a 1-to-1 ratio with the euro. And it's obviously positive news that hopefully there won't be too long to wait before the official Article 50 gets invoked. But as we know, obviously there's a long time gap between now and April 2017, with a hell of a lot of stuff to happen in between that. So I'm now going to cover this other article, which is from the Irish Times. Bank of Ireland to charge for placing cash on deposit. This was also posted on Friday. Bank, which is 14% owned by state, to impose unprecedented levy on larger customers. Bank of Ireland is set to become the first domestic financial institution to charge customers for placing their money on deposit with the bank. This unprecedented move comes months after European Central Bank began charging financial institutions for depositing money with it by charging them 0.4% to hold their cash overnight. The Times has learned that Bank of Ireland, which is 14% owned by the state, has informed its largest corporate and institutional customers that it plans to charge them for the deposits of €10 million or more from October. And we all know October is a huge date. It is understood that a negative interest rate of 0.1% will be applied to such deposits by Ireland's biggest bank. Only a small group of customers will be affected by the change, and the bank has indicated that it has no plans to levy a negative interest rate on either personal or SME customers. So I'll leave it there. Now, for all of you that don't know, Amazon has its main bank account and transactions going through Ireland. That's just one of the big customers that will have been notified. Now, when they say it won't actually affect most customers, it will only be affecting a few of the high-end corporations and individuals. This will actually have a trickle-down effect, as we know. Because what happens to huge corporations that hold large sums of money inside banking institutions, and these large sums are disintegrating over time and being eaten away by this negative cost to keep it inside the bank? Well, that's obvious. They move it out into other forms of asset allocation. Now, what happens when a bank loses huge amounts of deposit, which it has fractionally reserved out into other forms of loans and derivative bets? Well, the whole thing becomes unsustainable overnight, and the clause within the bail-in arrangements are the derivatives are the first markets to be paid out, and they have legal right to claim any amount of money inside the system. And guess who that is? That's right. That's me and you, the little guy inside that bank. Your accounts will be swallowed up when these big guys move their money out. So here's another banking-related subject with RBS. Biggest trading customers face negative rates. Royal Bank of Scotland will impose negative interest rates on some of the biggest customers from Monday. That's this Monday, the 22nd of August, as central banks' sub-zero policies start to bite. The 70 largest companies which are heavily involved in financial trading, including other banks and pension funds, will face the charge when trading options and futures. Traders have to post collateral with clearinghouses, funds which will cover the cost of transactions if the trader is unable to pay the bills. If the institutions put up cash on deposit as collateral, they will now face a negative charge. Central bank rates have fallen below zero in 5 major economies, and this is a source courtesy of Bloomberg. And you could just see from the 2008 crash what exactly has happened with the interest rates. Now, I had a comment from one of my subscribers who was asking about what happens about negative interest rates and what happens if they raise interest rates. Let me tell you, they can't raise interest rates because there is so much debt associated. Should a rise occur, then the debt spirals massively on repayments back to that original debt, which effectively will implode the system immediately if they don't create huge amounts of money into the system to sustain the debt repayments on existing loans, which is effectively hyperinflation of the money. So they can't increase rates. That's it. They can only go lower and lower. Carrying on. RBS argues that this is a fee imposed on the bank by the clearinghouses, and it is only now deciding to pass it on to customers. How thoughtful of them. It applies in euros, sterling, and other currencies. Quote, until recently, RBS has applied a 0% floor to the overnight rate charged for deposits required by clearinghouses for future trades, end quote, the bank said. Quote, however, due to the sustained low interest rate environment, RBS will now be passing the cost of holding such deposits onto a limited number of our institutional clients. Futures are entered into by sophisticated financial investors looking to hedge risk, end quote. If clients want to avoid the cost, they can post bonds or other securities as collateral instead. Normal deposit accounts with the bank are not yet affected by negative rates. Are not yet affected. They will be shortly. Last month, RBS and its sister bank, NatWest, wrote to small business customers, and I covered this in one of my previous videos. And here's a quick 30-second video from Mark Carney. See what he has to say.
I'm not a fan of negative interest rates. We see the negative consequences of them through the financial system. We've seen that in other jurisdictions. We have other options to provide stimulus if more stimulus were needed. Let me say this about the banks. The banks have no excuse with today's announcement not to pass on this cut in bank rate. And they should write to their customers and make that point.
He knows the system is fucked. So guys, I'll leave that one there as well, but you need to notice that all the banks are starting to initiate this negative interest. And if this isn't enough of a wake-up call for all of you to remove everything that you have from your bank accounts, because I'm telling you, it is not safe inside these establishments. It is your decision if you decide to remain trustful of these places, but if you can't see that the writing's on the wall, then unfortunately you will be one of the people who are most affected when the bail-in occurs on your accounts. And if you believe that you're protected by your £75,000 or €100,000 protections on your bank accounts, well, by the time that they pay back these amounts, those amounts that were taken up towards those limits won't be worth anywhere near the purchasing power of what they are in today's markets. So you need to hedge yourself to protect against this impending, inevitable implosion. That's just not fear porn. This is in the mainstream media. You can read this, you just have to understand what it is that they're telling you. They are telling you these systems are unsustainable. Thanks for watching.